Oh, my notes almost flew off. Hey everybody, Steve the Amateur Historian. How y'all doing? Hoping you're keeping yourselves together in these times of quarantine. And because we are still amidst times of quarantine, I've got another story to bring to you. Another kooky, crazy story. I discovered this one while I was doing, again, research for my Historic Murders of Portland series, looking up any stories that had the word murder potentially in them. And some of those cases, someone may have gotten shot, someone may have even gotten killed, but certain stories just didn't quite meet my requirements for Historic Murders of Portland episode, which isn't that hard to meet because a lot of the cases you'll see end up being just manslaughter cases or people getting off because it was deemed that the shootings were self-defense. But anything where someone shoots another person and there's the slightest hint of motive behind it, I'm going to include it in my series. But then there's other cases that I don't use that are still very interesting, where it's like you don't even know. In this case, in particular that I'm about to bring to you, it's a case where someone who was most likely to be the perpetrator, most likely to be the suspect of shooting someone, ended up going the opposite direction and being shot himself. So the story I'm bringing you is from July 9th, 1911. And involves I'm going to have to reference my notes a couple of times because this was an event that happened amidst the Bulgarian sect, I guess the Bulgarian immigrants who had lived in Portland. And the earlier days of Oregon, there was lots of people from various countries, and they all kind of stuck together, no matter what their skin color was, what their actual race was. Greeks stayed together, Jewish people stayed together, Spanish people stayed together, Italian people stayed together. No, people really didn't. Various people of various different national backgrounds, they kind of stuck with their own people. So it made sense then that July 9th, there was a large picnic held by these people who were of Bulgarian descent. And they held it at Macleay Park, which I've actually been to numerous times. I've actually vlogged there before. And it's kind of located, it's kind of one of those kind of parks that's kind of a mouth into Forest Park, which is a massive park in Portland's West Hills. So it's up northwest Portland. It's a cool little park. I wonder how much different it looked in 1911 compared to now. Probably not that much different. But anyway, there was a really large picnic. There was something like 30 people there. Probably a collection of a few families, some friends, and they were just enjoying the summer weather. So enters a fellow Bulgarian named Peter Alexov, which his last name is spelled Alexsoff. So I'm going with Alexov. And this guy, apparently kind of a seedy, sketchy character, guy that liked to incite hostility, a guy that was not afraid of the occasional crime. And there was actually a guy that happened to be at this picnic, a guy named Mike, I'm going with Christ. It's spelled like Christ, but I'm guessing it's Christ. And apparently these guys actually had beef with each other going back to their homeland. The newspaper article I read said they'd had issues with each other going back to their times living in Macedonia. So you've already got somebody at the picnic who's got beef against this guy, and pretty much everybody that was at the picnic knew who Peter Alexov was. He was kind of a notorious character amongst the Bulgarian populace in the Portland area. So the picnic begins, all is well, and sometime a little after noon, gunfire starts being heard in the area. So one of the guys that is at the picnic also either lives or works close by, because he's apparently, and his Davidoff was his name. I gotta make sure I get these names accurate. George Davidoff, or Davidoff. Again, a Bulgarian individual. He's one of the picnickers. He hears the gunfire, and he has horses in the area, so I'm guessing that he probably lived near the park. I mean, since the Bulgarians were meeting in this park, that's probably where a lot of them actually lived. That kind of stands to reason. So he goes to find whoever's shooting this gun off because this guy's scaring his horses, and that kind of starts things up. There also happens to be a deputy in the area, a guy by the name of Sexton. Or was it Saxton? Gotta make sure it's right. Sexton. J.H. Sexton. So he hears the gunfire, and of course, being a deputy, goes and starts looking for it himself. He meets up with Davidoff, and they kind of join forces trying to find out who's shooting this gun off. And it turns out it's this Peter Alexov guy. And as they're searching for him, Alexov shows up. Get out of here, Bumblebee! Douche. As they're looking for him, Peter Alexov shows up at the picnic. He probably heard somewhere through the grapevine that there was going to be this big gathering. And so he shows up with 2 revolvers, and I kid you not, like a pirate. He shows up with a knife as well, and he has the knife in his teeth, like across his mouth. Like he's a freaking pirate. So he shows up ready for a fight. And his plan is he's going to mug all these people. He's going to rip them all off and get away with their goods and get away with their money, their jewelry, whatever they had on him. But it was obvious... This guy obviously wasn't that smart of a criminal. And he obviously hadn't thought this out very well. First of all, why is he shooting off his gun before he even arrives at the picnic, which is going to attract attention to him from anybody in the area? Second of all, again, there's like 30 people at this picnic, and he's one guy. And one thing he didn't plan for, which was also really stupid because it's 1911, and a lot of people were packing heat back then if you lived in the Portland area. So several of the people at the picnic had guns on them. You just did. Because people would get robbed all the time back in the day. So he apparently was prepared for the fact that a bunch of people at this picnic were also going to have guns on them. And so he probably thinks this is going to be easy as can be. He's going to have his gun out. He's going to mug them one by one. Suddenly, several of the picnic people charge him and tackle him. And it's just this freaking fracas. And, at least 2 of them have guns in their hands. Mike Christ and Peter Alexov both have guns in their hands. And gunfire is heard, and nobody knows if somebody's intentionally shooting someone or if the guns are just going off in a fight. And one of the guys is wounded, but Peter Alexov gets shot in the stomach, and he is down. Like, that shot took him out. And it's right at this point that Officer or Deputy Sexton shows up on the scene, and he arrives just in time, just to show you. These people were not messing around. He shows up in time to see. Now, Peter Alexov is on his back, and he is out. He is in no position to fight. At least 5 or 6 of these picnickers are on top of him, and they're just beating the living hell out of him. And some others that were at the picnic wandered off looking for a rope because they were planning on lynching Peter Alexov, because he's not dead. He's been shot in the stomach, but he's still alive, so they're literally just going to beat the hell out of him, and then they were going to lynch him. So if Officer Sexton wasn't in the area, or somebody else who had power like that, an officer, didn't show up in time, Peter Alexov probably would have been lynched by this group of Bulgarian immigrants who were just out to have a nice picnic day together. So Sexton rushes the scene and manages to kind of diffuse the situation and manages to stop these people from lynching Peter Alexov. He obviously had worn out his welcome amongst his fellow nationals, and they were just done with him. I mean, multiple people at the picnic already hated him, and it's thought that one of the main reasons a lot of them had guns on them that day was that they thought someone specifically like Peter Alexov might show up and cause trouble. So, they were prepared. Kudos to Sexton for keeping a guy from getting lynched at a picnic in Macleay Park. But he obviously wasn't aware, because he wanted all these people, he wanted them all to be taken to the station so they could sort things out, figure out what happened, figure out who, if anybody, should actually be charged. But the thing was, Peter Alexov's injury was very severe, so they lug him to the police station, and only then do they realize, oh, this guy's actually in pretty bad shape, and then they rush him to the hospital. And while the officer, I would hope an officer wouldn't be doing this, but while a doctor was trying to remove the bullet from his body, he ended up dying as a result of his wounds. Back then, medical science wasn't remotely what it is today. Who's to say exactly if Alexov would have survived, even if he was quickly rushed to the hospital? But he did die at the hospital as a result of the wounds from a situation that he instigated. He could have stayed home and he would have lived on, possibly. I mean, he was inevitably going to rip somebody off again. But, he picked the wrong picnic to mess with, That's pretty much what happened. So, I found that story and I was like, this isn't quite a Historic Murders of Portland episode, because it didn't really seem like anybody actively was planning on actually shooting anyone, even Alexov, and then it just kind of happened that someone got shot in a fracas and ended up dying later on. But it was still, once I read through the whole story, I was like, this thing is ridiculous. Perfect for this little series of videos I'm doing for you guys. So, thank you so much for watching. As always, remember to like, share, subscribe, comment, hit up my Patreon. And till next time, stay safe, everybody. This has been Steve the Amateur Historian, and I'll see you next time.